Hello everyone, welcome to the Tech Podcast series. This is Lakshit Pant from Azure Developer Community and bringing you again one another episode of the Tech Podcast series with our industry leader Krutam Hathi with us for this episode. He's working as a software engineer at Microsoft and he has recently joined as a software engineer at Microsoft campus, and now he'll be working on the digital tech link project, which is more like an application that brings global IT support to user palms. And now from this episode, we'll try to understand from Kritam what are the typical technology myths that has been buzzing around, how he sees the future working at Microsoft, what are the tech shifts that are happening inside the organizations, and how he has been what are his views about the industry that has been there. So starting with a quick introduction, Kritam, if you can quickly introduce yourself first.
Yeah. So, hey, hi all. My name is Krutam. And as Lakshit said, I haven't recently joined Microsoft. I joined Microsoft in 2021. So, it's been over 2 years. So, yeah, I have joined Microsoft straight out of the college. Yeah. And previously, I also did a summer intern with Microsoft. Yeah, that's about it. And what I work on is what Lakshit already said. Yeah, we are good to go.
Yeah, so starting from my first question, because right now we are talking about generative AI. Now we are because after the release of Sora, now we are seeing the massive shift of the text to video transformation through generative AI. But somewhere or the other, if we circle back to this 4 years back, right, and from 2019, there has been major tech shift that we have seen or maybe experienced, like 4 years, four different technologies that from 2019, where 2019 this machine web development was in the boom. Then machine learning came up. Then there was an introduction of NFTs, blockchain stuff. Then 2020 was entirely led by Web 3.0. Then again 2022, 2023 was again by AI, GPT, and whatever. Right now in 2024, we have been seeing the massive development inside the generative AI thing. What's next? Can we expect here in the industry, and how do you see this? How to maybe any aspiring software engineer, how to build their skills to to cope up with all these massive shift in the industry?
Okay. Yeah, a very good point, Lakshit. So I would like to add something here. So nothing happens overnight, right? So I agree to the fact that 2019, 20, or probably 21 was a tipping point for AI/ML, and in 21, 22 when ChatGPT was released, LLMs were the talk of the town. But it definitely didn't happen overnight, right? So one of our leaders also mentioned that LLMs were talk of the town for niche people even before 2015 or around 2015. So nothing happens overnight, and so you cannot always just say that what will year 2024 or 2025 will be for. It's just that whatever breakthrough happens in whatever industry, uh, it 2024 or 25 will be year for that technology. And now talking about my experience or my perspective of what is 2024 or 25 is going to be like. So it's just an observation, I may or may not be right. So there was a time I was looking at Java being adapting at organizations adapting Java very quickly. So in the recent years, in last 6 months or an year or so, I have seen people shifting towards Go or Rust for that matter a lot.
Yeah,
So
I agree to that point when you said Rust, because I see a lots of maybe these programmers, especially the global ecosystem moving towards the Rust, right? I have seen this trend. And how do you see, means, what makes Rust so popular? Because there are already coexisting languages that are already present in the market, and especially when we talk about syntax and everything, Rust is pretty much decent in terms of, maybe Python is a lot better when it comes to syntax and easier syntax. But what makes this Rust so competitive with these languages? And I have never seen such adoption of any technology so far when it comes to Rust that I've seen in the past 6 months.
okay, so yeah, just a disclaimer before I say anything. Uh, I haven't worked really closely with Rust. And in my opinion, see, it's not just about the syntax, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
agree that Python has very pretty simple syntax, so Python should be used everywhere. Is it the case? No, it's not the case, right? For backend purposes, for I mean general computation, we have seen languages that are technologies that are much more faster than Python. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, one of the advantages that I think Rust has is that Rust gives you a lot of customizability when you are writing the code.
Okay.
So memory management becomes much more customizable. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And from Microsoft per se, what do you believe? Which is the most popular language internally? Is it C Sharp, .NET, or what it looks like inside?
yeah, in Microsoft for backend, we generally use C Sharp. For cloud, we use Azure, and for front end, it varies. We use adaptive cards, React, and for front end, it varies. But for backend, it's obviously C Sharp.net because it has been built by Microsoft.
Yeah, so for all those folks who have been saying, who have been, making these statements that from 2019 that C Sharp is obsolete now, companies are still adopting these new languages, and it's never been obsolete, right? It's always there in the market, right? Yeah, and also because now the trend has pretty much shifted a bit. I do not see any relevance of certificates, but I really want to say, know your perception about this. What has been the value of certification in the industry? Let it be any cloud certifications, let it be. So if I have to divide this podcast from into different zones, one place there is upskilling, at another place there is these certifications. How do you see and how do you balance both these things, and what are your thoughts about this?
Okay, so talking about certifications, I mean, certifications do play a role and they don't play a role. I would say it's both the things at the same time. It really matters on what sort of certification do you have. So personally talking about myself, I have a couple of certifications from Microsoft. So having a certification Microsoft gives you the credibility. I mean, it's a credibility that Microsoft has, and that's why that certificate has a value. And I I mean, I look at certifications more from from a learning perspective rather than showing off perspective. I don't have it on my resume, but yeah, I have certifications which makes my skill relevant at least till the time the certificate is relevant.
Again, I do not want to make it the typical podcast type, but again, because this has been the most fire burning topic, right? What you will prefer, competitive programming and the projects, right? Where do you think is the bigger scope of maybe getting a job or maybe getting an internship or landing an internship would be, especially talking about the product based organizations?
Okay, especially talking about the product based, or I mean, see, if you specially talk about some hotshot product based companies, I think problem solving will do your job. But
Okay.
the trend, the lag in hiring that I have seen post COVID, I feel developing a project of your own, having will add more to your skills than just competitive coding.
Wow. And when we, what had worked, learning from your experience, what do you believe what had worked out for you landing at Microsoft, from data science intern to that SWE zone? I just wanted to know your experience. Is it from a campus placement, and how it had worked out for you? And how do you believe for typical 2024 market where there are no such as jobs present in the market, right? What do you suggest all these young aspirants, where which industry, which segment to tap upon where they can find a good opportunity and land something, build something out of it, right?
So Lakshit, no matter what technology is in the boom currently, software engineering is nowhere in the future is going to go obsolete. So software engineering is one of the key fields that college students can look forward to contribute to. And talking about myself, how did I land my internship at Microsoft? So before getting an intern at Microsoft, I had two prior GSOC failures, so open
Oh.
source contribution failures. And yeah, contributing to open source was a very steep learning curve that I had to go through. And I will repeat that again. I have failed GSOC twice. So yeah.
See, when you talk about open source, right? What's the way? Because it's very very tough. People find to explore the right repository where they can contribute, right? Because for a beginner, for one who is just aspire to be an open source developer, understanding the code base and where to start from, and is my will my PR request will be generated. So, working on the project is different thing, right? It comes later, it's the later part. But figuring out the right repository to work upon, how do you find how one should approach to all these repositories?
Okay, so this is where the pain point comes. You just don't work on a repository to get yourself selected into GSOC. So the way I look at it is I read the documentation of the repository of the product or anything that's built. And if I like the idea of what is being built, I just start contributing to it at whatever capacity I have. And that should be the starting point for every open source contributor aspirer. So you should not just look at open source contribution as getting there into GSOC and finding some small repositories where there are not a large number of contributors and you can get selected easily. I mean, that's a hack, but that is not what learning looks like.
Yeah, and how do you see any relevance of contributing to documentations as well? Maybe when it comes to technical documentation of any big repository or any big organization.
Yeah, sure. Uh, contribution is a contribution in itself. And secondly, when you write documentation, right, you put your thoughts into words, and that's when you get a clarity of what your product is doing.
Hmm.
So I recently wrote a blog where there were two statements I wrote. There is this analogy that one listener function tells to another that is there a message, and in the second scenario, the listener function tells to the another listener function that there is a message.
Yeah.
I mean, th- there is just a relative difference in relative positioning between there and is, but that's what makes a huge difference in the technology and in the software that lies behind.
Yeah, and talking about the generative AI perspective, right? How do you see what could be the possible applications in the real time scenario? Because from a from a from a from an entertainment perspective, if we go beyond entertainment and the generation perspective, like for maybe Instagram content, this might be fascinating, right? But from a real industry use case, what do you see the real relevance of generative AI coming in?
Okay, so first of all, ChatGPT is a generative AI, right?
Right. Yeah. Most probably.
From an industry perspective, any copilot for that matter, be it GitHub Copilot, be it Visual Studio Copilot, any copilot for that matter is a generative AI. And
Hmm.
talking from an industry perspective and talking from my own opinion, it has reduced my uh, coding time drastically, and
Okay.
my efficiency is now to a next level when I use GitHub Copilot or when I use Visual Studio Copilot as my pair programmer.
Okay, so for an aspiring software engineer, you see a great relevance from a code and development perspective of GitHub Copilot, right? That's what you mentioned. And
Yeah.
now, because this is the most crucial part of our industry, and I really believe this has to be broken down. And wherever I go to any kind of talk or something, like, I be very harsh with my audience talking about the influencer culture that has been there in the market, right? Because some way or the other, I believe that has flooded the market with so much crap that even no one could figure it out what's genuine and what's not. So how do you see the influencer in the industry, and what to believe and whom to believe, how to find out the right guy or right person which we can follow, or which the content we can follow? How do you see the entire culture?
How I look at it is, so first of all, I only look forward to engineering influencers, and I don't just look
Right.
forward to any influencers. Okay,
Right.
so I have seen influencers who influence people by posting remote jobs or by posting jobs. I mean, that's what they can do by going into career space, right?
Right.
Just you don't just create content for the sake of creation.
Hmm.
And the influencers I look forward to are the influencers who are wrong at times, who accept their mistakes at times, and who are ready to learn and grow along with their audience all the times.
Yeah.
Recently, I wrote a blog where I made a small mistake in mathematically calculating some values,
Okay.
and there were a couple of people who commented that this is wrong, and I totally accepted that it was wrong. I also pinned that comment saying that the above mathematical calculation is wrong. I didn't delete the post. I just wrote a postscript that the mathematical calculation is wrong. Please feel free to use your own brains and do mathematical calculations. And I mean, I am looking forward to not repeating the same mistake next time.
Wow, wow, that honesty needs to be there, and I believe one from a, when you deal with so much audience, when you see that a couple of folks are following you, you should be very precise of what you are posting, and you should be ready to admit your the mistakes that you do. Ultimately, we all are humans, right? And
Right.
because how I see this industry right now, people are saying these 21 days for this content and you will be a web development monster full stack developer, and that has no relevance to the industry, that has no practical approach to it, right? And one cannot be uh, one can understand the upper layer, but understanding the depth of it is not possible. Develop self development is zero there, right? When we see about all these influencer cultures. And again, same thing about the layoffs as well. A couple of folks keep asking us like, how these layoffs are happening, recession is there. I believe recommendation engines plays a big role. I'll ask you for the same. I believe you will always maybe go with my point as well, because if one will do not like or maybe comment on a layoff post, he will not see another layoff post, right? So if one is, because right now if I'll just open my LinkedIn, all the first post that I will see will be someone hiring or some at some company, right? So that recommendation engine plays a major role. I just wanted to know your views about this. What, how do you see this less layoffs and recessions?
Yeah, so one of the words that you used pretty much on point was outsmart. So uh, now is not the time just to work hard, but working smart will be a key thing during these times. And as I said before, leaving some top shots product companies, rest all the companies will look for some specific skill in the I mean in the employee they are hiring. So yeah, picking up one skill and learning one skill till its depth will be the key to get hired in this year, is what my opinion is. And talking about the recessions, it will never go back to what pre-COVID times were like. But yeah, I think
Okay.
job openings have started coming up, and it's not as bad as it used to be last year or last to last year.
Yeah, agree. I totally agree with your learning, with your experience. And now, as we are reaching to the end of this podcast, I just wanted to know, how do you see, because it has been in the trend, right? Most of the time, and we see in the Instagram or maybe through multiple social channels, people are documenting their journey maybe through 100 days of cloud, 100 days of development. And how do you see this as effective from a learning perspective? Because I see this is a very good approach, because you are learning as well. You are showcasing what you are learning, and also you are, in some sense, it's making your social presence in the industry. And what are your thoughts apart from this?
I totally agree to it. So, be it 100 days of coding or 100 days of cloud, I think a Azure developer community has also started something as 100 days of cloud, right?
Yeah. 100 days of
Yeah,
cloud.
so focusing on one skill for 100 days is any always going to be beneficial for those whoever signs up for it. So yeah, what it does is it channels your hard work, it channels your energy into doing one thing, and when you channel your energy into doing just one thing, you are going to be good at it, and you are going to learn a lot when you channel your energy at just one thing and don't multitask or don't have the overheads of switching your tasks.
Now when you have, because again this question comes very frequent, right? When you have experience, when you have said about the channeling your focus, right? For a freshman engineer, for a first year student engineer, he one try to explore all the domains like where his interests lie in, right? So what do you prefer, channeling your focus in itself in the first year would be great, or exploring everything and maybe a little bit about every tech domain that is present in the market? What would you prefer, and what should be the right approach to it, to explore?
I feel exploring in the initial year of your career is very important, because that is when you will get to know
Okay.
what excites you and what doesn't excite you. So for example, if you are if your career experience is less than 3 4 years, I will say go try out writing some front end code, go try out contributing in the back end services of your project, go try out doing some machine learning things, and so on and so forth. Because until and unless you try, you won't get to know what interests you. And from my personal experience, so there was this machine learning buzz that going on, that is still going on since past 6 8 months, right? I mean,
Right.
I tried digging deep in, I tried contributing into a couple of machine learning projects, and that's when I got to know that machine learning is a hell lot of maths. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that maths doesn't excite me, but it's when I started contributing, I got to know what is in the core of machine learning. And yeah, we generally have the surface level information, we don't have the core level information unless we contribute to that area. So yeah, exploring projects is what I will suggest if you are new to the industry.
And being at Microsoft, and what has been your role? What does your day-to-day work look like, right? Maybe what kind of projects you are working on, what kind of features you are working on, if you have to just explain it in a simple layman terms to us.
So okay, I won't be able to say what we are currently building, but what I am currently doing in that as project is I like building backend services, and I like brainstorming the aspect of making scalable services, scalable backend architecture. So one of the things that I recently realized, recently as in 1 year or so after my career started, is that scalability is not just from the user base aspect. Building a scalable backend can be scalability can be from a feature perspective, can be from a user's perspective, or there can be 100 other perspectives that the word scalability comes with. So yeah,
Okay.
my day-to-day life looks like working on back-end projects. I like exploring stuff, I like reading a lot. So yeah, that's what I do.
Now, what is the, as a last point, like what's the best advice you want our audience to leave with right through this podcast? Those, to all our listeners who aspire to be at Microsoft, what last piece of advice you want to leave our audience with?
One last thing that I would like to say is, if you are looking me here right now, that's because I was there at your place sometime in my life as well. So just keep on working, be curious about, no matter what you are curious about, keep reading on what you are curious about, and you will reach there where you want to be.
Wow, wow! Thank you for that last book. That's the best. Again, consistency is the key, and everyone should keep store high and just try to build a more upskill, keep upskilling yourself, and everything is possible. And one should, just summarizing what Krutam said, it is all about the leisure. You should be very leisure sharp focused if you are trying to build something and achieve something very good, right? So thank you, Krutam, for coming to this podcast, giving out your time. It This podcast was so much awaited for a long time, right? Finally we have recorded this, and thank you for taking out your time for this podcast. It was really nice talking to you. Again, we have discussed some basic terms that were present in the industry, but these were really useful from a student per se. It was really needs to be disclosed, right, from the student body. So thank you for joining us for this podcast. But really nice hosting you from my side.
Yeah, thanks Lakshit, it was great recording this podcast with you.